Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, What Does Customer Service Mean? I'm your host, Allison Crawford. Customers drive success or failure, and organizations often think they understand their customers, engaging them in a manner they believe will provide a valuable service. However, through conversations with customers and customer research, we've learned that many firms miss this mark. Today, we're joined by 3 experts who will share their insights and experiences to define customer service, explain how to understand customer needs, and teach you how to design a customer service program that will deepen relationships with your customers. Before I hand this over to Laura and the rest of the panel to review the research, there are a few things I want to cover with you. First, we're recording today's session and we'll post it to our on-demand webinar page. You can visit our website to listen to this or any of the other webinar recordings. Additionally, we'll send out the slides to all the attendees within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. We encourage you to share these slides and the recordings with others in your organization, and if you have questions, please reach out to Laura or myself to set up a discussion after the event. We want to hear your questions about our findings throughout the presentation. Please post the Q&A or chat function to the left of your screen. We've left time at the end of the webinar to address all of your questions. Finally, we will be live tweeting the webinar. So if you'd like to join the social media conversation, you can use hashtag SCIwebinar and @SCI Insights during the event. Now, let me introduce your panel. First, we're joined by Keith Holliday, Director of Supply Chain and Logistics at S&OP Products. Keith has had a long career in supply chain, starting out in the chemical industry with DuPont before jumping into the CPG space with S&OP Products, which is not to be confused with Sunoco Retail. We're also joined by Dale McClung, Senior Supply Chain Manager focusing on international supply chains, continuous improvement, innovations, and lean process optimization. Dale and his team focus on delivering the best supply chain and international logistics solutions, and he's ingrained in this team a passion for customer satisfaction, delivering sustainable cost savings, and providing expert advice and support for customers and supply chain partners. Finally, your host, Laura Cesari, founder of Supply Chain Insights. As an enterprise strategist, Laura focuses on changing faces of enterprise technology. Her research at Supply Chain Insights is designed for the early adopters seeking first-mover advantage. Current research topics include the digital consumer, supply chain sensing, demand shaping and revenue management, market-driven value networks, accelerating innovation through open design networks, the evolution of predictive analytics, emerging business intelligence solutions, and technologies to improve safe and secure product delivery. She advises vendors and end users around the world on strategies to improve supply chain performance. So this is a very distinguished panel, so I'm not going to take any more of your time. I'd like to pass this over to Laura to get started with the presentation. Laura?
Well, thank you so much, Allison, and thanks to the folks that are on the webinar. I just want to remind people to put in your questions as we go along, and we will be sharing the slides and the recording on LinkedIn and SlideShare, and please feel free to share with others. The genesis of this webinar is really rooted in my work with clients. When I go to a client, often a client will say they want to have a customer-centric supply chain, and they want to build a customer-centric supply chain strategy. But when I ask them, who's your customer and what is the relationship of your customer and how are you designing those processes, they look at me really strangely. And most of the companies I've worked with, when I say customer service, they think about order management or order to cash. And my goal with this webinar is to have us think deeply about what is a relationship, what is a customer-centric supply chain, and I want to use the research as a backdrop to really drive a discussion. And one of the reasons that I picked my panel was Keith Holliday I've known for about a decade, and Keith as a supply chain leader is a person who knows his customers, and I can ask him, do you service customer XYZ, and he can tell me in great detail. And he's worked hard to bridge the gap between sales and operations. And Dale McClung works at 3PL BDP International, and we're going to start getting more of the service providers' views. And customer service and relationships are so critical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by having Keith and Dale tell us a little bit about their organizations, and then we're going to get into the research. So Keith, let's get started. We got your first slide up. You know, a lot of times people think about Sunoco and they think about the oil producer, not the packaging company in South Carolina. Tell us a little bit about your company.
Well, that was a good introduction, Laura. Usually when I'm speaking to folks, I might have a group of people and I'll ask the question, how many of you buy gasoline from Sunoco products? And 80% of the room will raise their hands. And then I ask, okay, how many of you recognize that we're really a packaging company? And the remaining 20% are probably from our customers, and so they'll, of course, know what we do. We're about a $5.3 billion producer of consumer packaging, but also we produce industrial packaging products as well. And we consider ourselves to be a mid-cap company, but we're a significant size. We have 20,000 employees. We also have more than 300 plants around the world, and people will look and say, okay, $5.3 billion company, 300 operations, how can you possibly manage that? Well, the reality in the packaging industry is that you have to be next door to your customer because most of your packages contain air, and so you really can't ship them long distances. And so converting operations tend to be near the customer. Heavy manufacturing you can do centrally, but that's one of the reasons that we tend to be very intimate with our customers because our plants may be right next door to them. So one of our products is refrigerated dough, composite cans. GMI is a customer with Pillsbury, and we go through the wall from our plant into their plant. And so that's typically what you see in the packaging industry, and that's why we have a lot of operations. But just to give you a perspective on the range of activities that we have, we break ourselves into consumer and industrial. Industrial tends to be vertically integrated, paper-based products like tubes and cores and reels and those types of things. But we also do what we call protective solutions, which is temperature-assured packaging, which supplies the pharmaceutical industry. And then on the consumer side, some of the products that you would know well, Planters, nuts are in our composite cans, Pringles cans. In the flexible packaging area, we do the reclosable cookie containers for Oreo. When you look at beauty and healthcare, we make blow-molded bottles for shampoo and those kind of things. So a very wide range of products, a very diverse set of supply chains. We've done this fairly well. Laura, if you can give the next slide. We've received a number of acknowledgments and awards for the way we conduct business, and that gives us a great deal of pride. If you think about our products, if you're a packaging company, everything you make is waste. The product is done once it's done its job of getting the product to the ultimate consumer, and so we have to be very sensitive to the sustainability of our business. And so we're very proud of the fact that we've been a part of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for 7 years in a row. We're one of only 2 packaging companies that's in the index, and so we work very hard to run a sustainable business. About 58% by volume, or by weight, of everything that we produce is recycled by Sunoco. So, we work very hard to have a sustainable supply chain, and you can see some of the other accolades that we've gotten as a company. Laura, back to you.
Awesome. Now let's shift to Dale. Now, Dale, you work for a company that's really focused on customer intimacy, but it's a third-party logistics and transportation company. And, I know you also do a lot of work with Apex in your training. So tell me what customer intimacy means to BDP International.
Yeah. Hello, Laura. Thanks for having me on here. I work for BDP International. We were founded in 1966. It's a privately held company. And our core competency is really customer intimacy, right? So we handle international logistics for a number of very large chemical companies, textiles, and have business in over 135 countries worldwide. The focus of customer intimacy and being able to relate performance of logistics to expectations of deliveries, of costs. That's our focus point. We have principal industries in chemical, oil and gas, life sciences, and our core competencies, as I mentioned, are not only the performance, but also the talent and the employees that we have and the experience we have internationally. So we couple all of that together to form this cloud of customer excellence and expectations.
Well, awesome. Well, let's get into the research. And what we're going to do is use the research as a backdrop of discussion. Now, one of the issues that is often a barrier as people try to be intimate with their customer is the definition of supply chain. Often supply chain and sales is not very open to the supply chain, meeting with customers, knowing customers. And in fact, we see the greatest gap in functions between sales and operations. We've done this study probably 7 times over the last year, and every time we get the greatest gap is between sales and supply chain. So Dale, how do you cross this chasm, or have you experienced this?
Yeah, we definitely experience this gap in sales and supply chain. Sometimes the output of this gap is pretty severe. So missed expectations, misaligned spend. So we have to be really careful about how sales represents the supply chain, and vice versa, how the supply chain is flexible and nimble enough to meet the needs of sales. My experience is this is an educational journey between the two groups, which involves a lot of interaction with supply chain meeting the customers and the sales folks understanding not to be experts in supply chain, but understanding enough of supply chain to represent it well. So the gap is there, it's palpable. Closing the gap is education, experience, cross-functional collaboration.
And we find that when the gap closes, that people are able to better meet their goals of cost and inventory and also growth. Keith, what's your experience here? Have you experienced this gap, and any insights about how to close the gap?
Well, very definitely, we've experienced the gap. We've had some success in closing it. One of the advantages we have is our sales guys do understand the manufacturing of our products. So they know what we can do. They know what our products can do. They understand the properties. Pretty well integrated with R&D, for example. But we do find that the lack of information often becomes a problem. Just as an example, customer service makes an order promise to the customer, and that's really the beginning of the supply chain, and they're going to promise a certain product, certain quantity to be delivered at a certain time. And the information they have may not be complete. They may not have good inventory information. They may not understand what the manufacturing schedule looks like. And so they're going to do their best to make a promise that we can keep. But if they don't have the best information, then they're going to have difficulty in doing that. And so those first two, sales and supply chain integration, but also supply chain and IT, are really interrelated because the lack of information is often what trips us up. The other issue that we've run into a few times is that sales owns the commercial relationship, and they're a bit reluctant to let supply chain talk to the customer because they're afraid we may do something to cause a problem with the commercial relationship in price, or what we've committed to around lead time, or inventories we've committed to hold for the customer. And so when we try to do collaborative planning, they're not always the first to sign up and help us do that. And just an example of that is we had a customer that we were having trouble servicing because we really didn't understand their needs, and we wanted to create a supply chain to supply chain conversation to begin to close that gap. Sales resisted doing that for about 6 months. And then once we said, okay, we're going to have to do this, we have too many problems, then the procurement folks on the customer side were nervous, and they didn't want to let us talk to their supply chain people. And so you get into that nervousness about the commercial relationship, and that sometimes inhibits the ability of the supply chain to really integrate. So those are two areas that we've experienced it. The part of what we've done to close the gap is we've used APIX training. I know Dale is heavily involved with APIX training as well. Most of our customer service people are now APIX CSCP certified, which helps them understand what the supply chain needs to do its job and how things should be fitting together.
Hey, it's a journey. How long did it take you, Keith, for you to get that kind of appreciation or influence to be able to have those conversations?
Well, I think over time our salespeople have started to realize what the supply chain can do for them. Just as an example, recently we were looking at what our customer was telling us that their demand was going to be, and our sales leader for that customer said, hey, do you guys have any information that would help me really understand what the customer is going to do, because I don't believe these forecasts. And so we were able to bring them a statistically derived demand forecast that says, okay, based on history and statistics, here's what it would tell us that we should do. And then so we got to have a conversation around data that was truly important to the sales leader. And that's been key, is really to bring the sales leader knowledge and intelligence that helps them do their job better.
Well, and we've got a question right now. I'll take it for Keith and Dale. It's directed to Keith, but the question is, how did you help your salespeople better understand manufacturing? And Dale, I know you've worked in the manufacturing world, and I think it applies to your situation as well. How do you do the education? Dale, your thoughts?
Right. So we were implementing SAP at a company I was working with, and this idea of lead time came up and became very important. And the question was, how does sales, when they're out there selling new products, how do they represent our lead time correctly? And one of the worst meetings I've ever led in my life is when I put market or a product manager in front of an SAP programmer, and we tried to figure out what lead time was. So that was an experience. But getting them involved in the S&OP process is a great way to help them understand the complexities and the nuances of the supply chain. So when we got sales involved in a new S&OP process that we launched with the company, it really opened their eyes and helped them to understand why these forecasts that they were giving us are so important. So integration into the S&OP process was a great way to get them involved. Another way to get them involved, we found, was getting them to the plants. When we looked at our sales team, we were kind of taken back by the number of times they have not been at our plants and warehouses. And, so giving them tours of the plants and warehouses seems rudimentary, had a very positive impact. So those are a couple of examples, Laura, where we were able to educate the sales team. Thanks.
Keith, your thoughts there?
We've done some similar things. I think getting the sales guy to the plant is just invaluable. You really have to do that to begin to understand where the product comes from and what some of the issues are. So to help facilitate that, we hold most of our customer sales meetings at the plant or one of the plants that supports that customer. So the sales guys will go there. They'll talk to the plant manager, talk to the staff, see the plant while they're there. And again, we're very close. Plants tend to be very close to our customers, so we often will have the sales guys meet the customer at the plant. So that's very, very powerful. Another way we do it, which is very traditional, is when we have a miss, we analyze that miss and do a root cause investigation with a cross-functional team. The salesperson's involved, the operations folks are involved, The CSRs involved. We get all those folks together to talk about how did we drop the ball, what happened to us, and that forces you to confront the issue of, okay, our capability wasn't there to support this customer. Okay, and maybe we have a capability issue, or maybe we have a one-off issue we can deal with, but we got to sit down and figure out root cause in order to be able to do that.
Yeah, so true. The first step, I think, for having any discussion is having reliability. And often reliability starts with a discussion of order management. Why did that order not get to the plant? And, we find that, in our studies that, if we look at order management, it rates as extremely important. So the way to look at the slide is that 40% see order management as extremely important, and 94% see it as either important or extremely important. So it's one of the most important applications within the supply chain world. But yet when we look at satisfaction, you can see the gap that 26% are extremely satisfied, 60% are generally satisfied, and you can see the comparison with the other applications. Keith, does this data surprise you at all, and anything you'd like to share about order management and why people aren't more satisfied?
I'm not surprised at all. I would have rated them the same way.
Okay.
We struggle with order management the same as anyone else, and I mentioned one issue already, which is the order promise, which is the beginning of the supply chain, because that promise has to be made within the context of our capability and where we are at that particular moment in time. And we very often find that we overpromise. The customer comes in and says, "Yeah, I know your lead time's 3 days, but I need it tomorrow. And we need you to jump through hoops and get that for us." And we'll typically do it. We'll break into a campaign, we'll make it, we'll get it to the customer and save the day. The customer's very appreciative, okay, but we've allowed our process to degrade because now we told the customer we can do it, and the next time, hey, they don't need 3 days, they only need 1 day, and we find that continues to put you behind the 8 ball because you can do it one-off, but you can't do it every time. And the customer begins to expect it to happen every time. One of the things that's helped there is being able to get a meeting of the minds with the customer on what is our lead time capability and what are we willing to promise. And part of helping with that is to get an agreement with the commercial people that, hey, if we do have to break in, we'll do it, but there should be a cost to that, okay, because it costs us money. And in that way also the customer will be reluctant to do it because they know it's going to cost them. So even though a commercial guy might say, okay, I don't want to charge the customer for that, I want to ride in on the white horse and save the day, it actually is important that you do that in order to maintain a common perspective on what should our normal capability be. So that order promise is a very important element of making your order management process work, and then being true to the business rules that are behind it. Kind of the second issue that we've run into that's growing to be more and more of an issue is with the growth of ERP systems. Okay, and everybody's got one, they're all on SAP or Oracle or something. The automated transactional processing has increased the number of transactions dramatically. Most of our CPG clients want to EDI their orders to us, and they want it shooting right out of their SAP system. And every time you touch an order or do anything to it, it sends a change order through automatically the way most of them are configured. And so, one particular example was a CPG customer that we started looking at the data, and we were getting 33 changes for every order that was submitted to us before we actually executed that order. Some of those changes were very, very small, so we were getting through hundreds of these changes every week in this one particular business. And what made it even worse was they were auto-faxing it to a fax machine that would then spit out faxes, and it would jam up, we would miss things. And out of those hundreds of faxes that were coming across, there were probably 3 changes that really mattered. 3, 5, whatever. And so being able to manage and filter this huge transactional load has turned out to be critically important to us in being able to not miss orders, not put wrong information into the system that we try to execute against.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Let's just connect company to company, but we're getting some garbage, and we don't have a system of record. I was talking to a supplier the other day of Caterpillar that was saying, they get 15 changes a day for the production schedule of what they need to manufacture, and they don't know what's real. And so the system of record and B2B integration, I think, is a really important topic, and also the context. Dale, your perspective here on order management?
Yeah, sure. So, BDP moves a lot of cargo internationally. Ocean freight is a big part of that. And with order management and understanding and having good lead times is, as you can imagine, critical to that. And so what we're seeing is our customers are living in the environment of Amazon, of eBay, where there's a lot of visibility to movements of your order through the supply chain, through logistics, through delivery right to your house. And they want to see that same visibility and expect the same level of performance in their commercial supply chains as well. So one of the challenges, story, we had a customer who was upset at the on-time delivery of their ocean freight, and when we looked at how much time they were giving us to actually ship and deliver the order, it was about 20 days, but the ocean transit alone was 35 days. So we said, gosh, how could we have such a big disconnect from the customer expectations to what we can promise? So we started doing root cause analysis, and what we found out was it was actually the customer service person who was not telling the customer what the system was saying that they could deliver, a promise date. They were overriding the ocean transit time in the system to compensate for what the customer asked for. And then it was left up to the logistics provider to find a ship that could sail faster, and most of the time was more expensive, or in some cases air freight, which is very, very expensive. So, setting expectations for order management is key. Aligning the expectations with the ERP system is just as important. We've got some other examples of where the warehouses, you'd think with international cargo you have more time to plan, more time to get ready, but oftentimes what happens is it's right up to the minute and to the second. And the manufacturing process and quality inspection lead time comes into play too. So the warehouses are delivering the cargo at the last minute, the paperwork at the last minute. So that's the connection between ERP, order management, customer satisfaction is, very, very important, and the customers are requiring a lot of visibility and transparency in the process, which, as you can imagine, oftentimes exposes the weaknesses of the process as well.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately, we don't have an app for that, right? And, what we see in B2C with our e-commerce orders as a consumer is a long ways away from what we see in customer segmented supply chains. So, Keith, do you segment your customers when you're dealing with order management, or do you treat them all the same? How do you work that with policies?
We used to treat them all the same, but the truth is they're not all the same. There's some customers that are strategic to us that we want to make sure that we treat very well and we take care of their needs and we meet their expectations. And then there's others that come in that are they're spot customers. They'll come in and buy from time to time, but they're not really committed to us. So we did initiate a few years ago a strategic customer program, and we have for our what we've classified as strategic customers, we have a high-level leader that their job is to integrate all the activities in support of that customer and make sure their needs are being met. And so those customers we'll jump through hoops for. We'll do a lot for them. There's some others that we want to service them well, and we want to take care of everybody. But the truth is, with thousands of customers, you're not going to be able to do that. So we segment them in that way. There are some customers every once in a while we decide to fire as well.
That's always an interesting discussion, yeah.
Yeah, that's not something that sales usually likes to do. But the truth is, there's some customers you're not really making money, and they're demanding a lot of you, and they're taking so much organizational attention that you're not really servicing those long-term guys that are going to be with you year after year. And so we've actually done more of that. Of course, we've been on the receiving end too, because we had a supplier the other day that came to us and said, we've decided that the capacity in the world's kind of tight in our product, and you're not strategic to us, therefore we're cutting you off. So that's not a very pleasant thing to go through, and so we don't take that lightly, but at the same time, we do have to pick and choose who we're going to service and who we're not.
Well, we're going to have, I think, a lot more of that. I don't know, Dale, do you segment customers?
On the logistics side, we do. We have to treat our highest volume customers a little bit differently than the lower volume, in that a lot of times we're fighting for space on ships and on planes, and bumping up against seasonality of fruits, vegetables, other manufacturers. So yeah, we have to treat our high volume customers differently.
Well, one of the things we've been working on is what matters in a relationship. And even though we implemented CRM, which supposedly has relationship in the title, it really doesn't help us to understand the relationship. So we've been doing surveys where we work with customers to understand their customers, and we also then work on segmentation. So we can see what matters by customer size or customer division. And one of the interesting things that we find is the relationship between reliability, quality, price, lead times, and ease of working with varies by customer and by segment, but that delivery reliability always comes up at the top. And even though we have a lot of price pressures and we have a lot of discussions around lead time and ease of working with, the reliability comes to the top of the heap. And even though the sales folks tend to rate themselves as, really driving the customer relationship, that whole front office commercial is usually less important. And then some of the things that some companies may think is very important, like marketing or global reach or industry leader, tends to come down even lower. And so, Keith, how does this compare with your perspective in terms of what are the most important criteria in those relationships, the secondary and then the tertiary?
It's actually a fairly complicated question, Laura. What we found is that it depends on who in the customer organization that you're talking to, because the people that are consuming your product within the customer organization, to them, delivery reliability and quality and lead time, ease of working with are critical. Okay? Those rise to the top, and price, they're interested in it because they're responsible for cost, but it's far less important. Unfortunately, the people that control the commercial relationship, they may be measured solely on price. And so when we're working with the procurement people in the customer organizations, they're not caring about the same things that their internal customers care about. And we're finding that's getting more and more dramatic. It used to be that the procurement guys within the customer organizations of many of the CPG customers were very, very sensitive to the needs of their plants. And now we're finding they're being incentivized so fast and so hard on price that that's really all they're going after. And we just completed a negotiation with a very large customer. And they came to us and said, okay, you've priced this product based on a 2-week delivery time, and we know that's what the plants have told you they want, but we're coming and telling you that we want you to price it on a 1-month lead time. And so we don't really care that the plants want it in 2 weeks. We're going to give them a month because it's going to get us a better price. So we really have to be careful what we're talking about.
Right. So you do change price structure based on lead time, Keith?
We do. Most of our manufacturing operations end up paying a lot more money or spending a lot more money for increased numbers of changeovers. And very often increased numbers of changeovers will also reduce manufacturing capacity. And so if we're able to group several campaigns together in a longer run, we can often save some money and pass that along to our customer. On the other hand, it's going to require more inventory. It's going to require a lot of hidden costs that are associated with managing that inventory. So there is an optimum here, but we don't always know, and our customers don't always know where that optimum point is for the end-to-end supply chain.
And our experience is it varies by division and by company size. Dale, how about you? Do you measure what drives customer satisfaction or have a perspective on it?
Yeah, Laura, we measure the voice of the customer on reliability and on-time delivery very, very closely. And in fact, I was just at a client's location the other day doing a global network optimization project, and they said, Dale, thanks for coming. We'd like for you to do a global network optimization project. And I said, okay, guys, what are we optimizing here? Are we optimizing your spend? Are we optimizing on-time delivery? And they said, oh, it's on-time delivery. But a lot of times when we go into clients with some of these modeling requests that we get, it really opens us up to the misalignment within their organization on what their mission, vision, and goals are when it comes to this, right? So what does it mean when the client tells us they want 98% on-time delivery for their products and for their cargo? A lot of times it's our job to deliver the bad news of, yes, number one, it is possible. Number two, it is going to be very, very expensive. And number three, it's not aligned with what your competitors are doing in terms of on-time delivery. So help us understand this customer expectation. Is it an embryonic product line? Is it a mature product line you're trying to remove working capital? Help us. So, yeah, number one, it's very important. Number two, it really opens up the gamut in terms of how aligned internally the companies are.
And I find they're not very aligned, and a lot of companies don't measure it. And the policy around price for lead time is not very well enforced. In fact, one of the things that we see in the research is that if we look at this particular customer, future 5 years versus the past 5 years, and we look at the relationship between price, lead time, quality, and some of the other elements in the buying decision, that price is becoming a very big focus area, particularly between procurement and sales. And quality and reliability is a major driver, supply chain to supply chain. And this ease of doing business with, right, is sort of in between that people assume, and it's hard to maintain. But getting all these balls in the right perspective cross-functionally is an art and requires, I think, very good communication and influence skills. Dale, your perspective?
Yeah, I completely agree. And the cost of delivery reliability is not well understood within organizations, but I don't think they also understand the cost of ease of working with customers too. So, it's what do you want to be when you grow up? What is your company's core competency? What market do you want to service? Do you want to increase market share over the next 5 years or decrease? These are all key questions that if you're going to go down the journey of improving delivery reliability, you need to understand the vision of the company. And a lot of our clients struggle with helping us understanding it because I don't think they have a clear view as well.
Right. That's my experience as well. Keith, yours?
Yeah, I think Dale's articulated it pretty well. There's a lot of misalignment within the customer organizations around what's most important, and we've hit that several times as we've gone through these charts. One of the struggles for us as a supplier is that we go ahead and work on price with the procurement organization of the customer, and they've made certain commitments around, okay, this lead time is going to be acceptable, this delivery reliability is going to be acceptable, this quality is going to be acceptable, and then when we go to the people that are actually consuming the product, they say, okay, yeah, we hear all that, and we understand purchasing made those agreements, but we still expect you to do this, this, and this. Okay?
Right.
They're not part of the agreement. We end up being caught between the commercial side and the execution side, and we have to we have to work hard to try to bridge the gap within the customer organization. And very often to do that, we've had to facilitate getting their people together in the same room with us to say, okay, let's hash out these agreements so that we're all on the same page. We've had some success doing that.
And that's harder to do than you might think. Even when we look at, say, a suppliers organization, this is some of the research that we did where we looked at the employee perspective within a customer, and we see that the customers rate the supplier higher in this particular case on ease of doing business with, whereas the employees see that that's low. But the supplier organization believes that salesperson accessibility, knowledge is really a driver, whereas the customer that they're servicing sees it as lower, and some of the things like global reach and industry leader are not as important to companies. And then when companies say, well, let's just measure, let's drive scorecards, and then let's measure the relationship, that isn't so easy either. So when we look at scorecards and we look at retail scorecards where we've had some of the longest traction, and we ask people to look at what's been the performance of the scorecard, it's really driven better on-time delivery and properly labeled cases, but it's not really driven the relationship. It's not really driven cost. And I think one of the issues is we have misalignment within the companies, and we really don't tie scorecards to buying, right? And so, we've got a lot of scorecards. On average, people have 2 to 3 scorecards per company. They're not used as well cross-functionally, and we don't tie them to buying. And so it's more difficult than you might think. Keith, your thoughts?
Yeah, it is difficult, but again, it varies by customer. Some customers understand the importance of aligning the scorecards and the measures of success, and so they'll actually sit down with us once a month and go through, hey, here's our perspective of how you're performing. And then we have our scorecards, and we bring them in and say, well, you're showing us as not being very good at on-time delivery. We're showing we did very well. What's the difference? And we kind of hash that out. So the customers that really understand the importance of that, we've got some good processes with. There's others that tend to be a bit more confrontational, and they just say, okay, here's our view of you. We don't care what your data says. We don't really care to have a discussion about this. We just want you to go fix it. So there's different levels of relationship that are out there. Some of them are more transactional and somewhat adversarial, and you just do the best you can with it. The ones where we really will invest the time, though, and continue to support and nurture the relationship are the ones where customers are willing to work with us, willing to talk to us, and then we can work together with them. And so we try to nurture those relationships. We value those very highly.
And what percentage are those, the customers that work well with you versus the more adversarial transactional customers?
Well, it can be from plant to plant as well. So, you get some big companies where they have different cultures in their plants, and we'll have one plant that's adversarial and another plant that is very collaborative. So there we try to nurture the collaborative relationship and get those two plants talking to each other. So,
okay, that's good tip. Yeah.
So we can sort that out a bit, and then, as you say, it can be kind of difficult. I think the secret is really get on to data-driven conversation. We can get on data and talk to each other about why our perceptions are the way they are. That tends to change the relationship. If all we're doing is sharing perspectives, it really doesn't work very well. My opinion and yours are different. We agree to disagree.
Right. Dale, your perspective around scorecards and alignment within the company?
Yeah, just recently talked to two different clients. One client was in the commodities area, and another client was in the specialties. And oddly enough, they both had the same question. They said, Dale, talk to us about our scorecard performance and the cost of on-time delivery compared to our competitors and our industry group. So I'm seeing this shift toward, yes, we have a scorecard, but how effective is it at, improving our core competency or, helping our business model? So in the commodity discussion, we talked about how they were paying typical costs for typical delivery. And then the discussion came around, well, is that good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the specialty market, it was, we don't care so much about cost. We want the best delivery. And is our scorecard and is our performance reflecting that? And are we standing out as market leaders? So alignment with the scorecards to external benchmarking performance is something I'm seeing more and more of. And I don't know, Laura, if you're seeing that as well.
I am, but I'm not seeing it really tied to buyer behavior, right? I think we get a lot further down the path where the scorecard has some teeth to it. But it's time for us to close up now. So, Keith, if people are listening to this webinar, what's the one thing you want them to leave with?
Probably the message that you gave them at the beginning of the conversation when you talked about how we go talk to our customers and we gain understanding by doing that. So there really is not a substitute for going and having a conversation around data and how we each can think of success and how we measure it. Now, the truth is you can't talk to every customer, but you've got to spend some time talking to the ones that really are important to you and are the thought leaders in the particular industry that you're in. And so, I don't think that you can really understand what the customer wants by just, submitting a survey and getting a bunch of stuff back and reading through it. That's important. That can give good data. But at the end of the day, that data has to be tested against a conversation, and it's a conversation with more than one part of the customer's organization. It can't just be the purchasing people. It can't just be the plant people. You got to get the range of perspectives that really exist within the customer organization.
And that relationship word, right? It's just not a relationship with a single individual. It's really understanding the complexities of the organization, the reporting relationship, and what matters, and what matters to individuals, because each individual typically values something different. Yeah. Dale, how about you? If you had one thing you wanted to leave the audience with, what would it be?
I would say strengthen collaboration with the customers and the suppliers is key to moving forward, right? Having the right alignment with expectations, having a cross-business dialogue, and that partnership is crucial to the sustainability of the scorecards, of the relationship, of the performance, of the cost. A lot of collaboration with big data, EDI connectivity. So key, live and die by the relationships. Collaboration is key.
But we got to build the relationships. And to that end, one of the things we're doing at Supply Chain Insights is, we're now in our 4th year. We'll be 5 years old in February. We've published 85 reports. We are getting ready to have our next Global Summit, which will be our 4th Global Summit, where we encourage leaders to talk to leaders and to think differently. We do about 20 surveys a year, so if you're asked to do one of our surveys, we keep all of our information confidential. And we do a monthly webinar like this one was part of our webinar series. And so throughout the year in 2016, you're going to see our monthly newsletter be very rich with content around network of networks and non-relational analytics and what's happening in the analytics markets and visibility markets. The other thing is we publish all of our research in our community called Beat Fusion, and Beat Fusion is designed to be the superfood for the supply chain. We've got about 700 people now in Beat Fusion, and it's designed to be a dialogue. And so our goal is that Beat Fusion becomes the monster Yelp, LinkedIn for supply chain leaders around the world. It's free to everyone, and it includes all of the work that we've done on metrics and surveys and research. And it's just not for us, it's for the entire world. There's only 3 rules: no marketing, no profanity, and no nudity, and everything else goes. It's all about supply chain and supply chain discussions. And our supply chain event for the year, where we imagine and we think about supply chains differently, is September 6th through the 9th, and it's in Scottsdale. And I look forward to seeing people on the phone there and to continue the relationship with the greater supply chain community. So Dale and Keith, we have a couple of questions, and I want to just be sure that we get these right. There's one about segmenting customers based upon lead times, and I think both of you said that you do that, right?
Well, we segment our customers, but it's not all on lead time, okay?
Okay.
It's based on a number of criteria. Part of it can be, suitability for what we manufacture, lead time requirements, margins that we make on those customers. We want to keep those higher margin ones around that have been with us for a while. So there's several criteria we use when thinking about our customers in terms of importance to the company and the fit of our supply chain to support their needs. And maybe the third area is the strategic fit for where we want to go in the future.
Well, the good thing is you're analyzing that, right? I think that's a good start. A lot of clients I know don't even analyze that kind of analysis.
Absolutely. It's helped us a lot.
Yeah. Dale, your thoughts there about customer segmentation? Any insights?
Yeah, I agree with the lead time is for us key on what kind of industry is it? Is it commodity or is it specialty? And the areas that the customers, our clients, are trying to focus on, right? So is it ocean freight? Is it air freight? And what are their expectations? And what are they paying for in terms of lead time? So the segmentation and cost go hand in hand is a pretty big factor. There are some factors, but that's the big one.
Right. Now, we're going to close now. We will send the presentation that we have shared, and you're welcome to share this within your organization. We'll also share the recording. And if you'd like to continue the dialogue, I have the information on the screen about how to contact us and how to contact Dale. Dale is a new blogger on Beat Fusion and also on Twitter. So we appreciate you joining our conversation today. Allison, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Laura, and thanks to you, Keith and Dale, for joining us, and for all of you that joined us on the phone. As Lauren mentioned, we're sharing all of the social media links with you here, so we encourage everyone to engage with us not only in Beat Fusion, but as well as on our site to get access to all of the research, as well as our LinkedIn page, and follow us on Twitter. We'll be sharing a lot of breaking news on that page. If there's any questions, please do follow up with us and ask us anything that we can do to help you with your supply chain. And as Nora mentioned, we'll send up the slides and the recording links to everyone within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. So if we don't hear from you before next time, please join us on our next webinar on supply chain talent next month, and we look forward to helping you guys all on your supply chain journey. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.